My son texted me saying, "You are out of the company. We are moving on without you." I did not scream. I did not drive my truck through the front door of the headquarters I built with my bare hands. I simply typed 2 letters. Okay. Then I put my phone down, drove to a diner, ordered black coffee, and opened a laptop my daughter-in-law once called a piece of garbage. With one click, I locked every truck, every warehouse door, and every bank account they thought they owned. By the next morning, my son had called me 36 times. But by then, they had already lost everything. I am Enoch Freeman. I am 68 years old, and I have spent my entire life building something that would outlast me. For 40 years, I hauled steel, navigated corrupt unions, and slept in cabins that smelled of diesel and sweat so that my family would never have to know what it meant to be hungry. I built Freeman Logistics from a single rusted flatbed into a fleet of 500 trucks dominating the East Coast. I thought I was building a legacy. I thought I was building a future for my son Darnell. But yesterday, sitting in the cab of my 1998 Ford pickup staring up at the glass and steel facade of the company headquarters, I realized I had only built a throne for a usurper. Before I continue this story, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to remind ungrateful people exactly who put the roof over their heads. The vibration of the phone in my pocket felt like a premonition. I pulled it out. The screen was cracked, another thing my daughter-in-law Victoria hated about me. She said it looked unprofessional for the founder of a multi-million-dollar logistics empire to carry a broken phone. I never cared. I cared about the numbers, the routes, and the people. The message was from Darnell. It was long, but only the first sentence mattered. The board has voted Dad. You are officially removed as chairman effective immediately. Victoria and I agree that the company needs a modern face to attract the Global Corp buyout. Don't come back to the office. Security has been notified to revoke your access. We are moving on without you. I read it twice. The sun was setting, casting a long orange reflection on the office windows. I could see the light on the top floor. Darnell's office. My old office. I imagined him sitting there, probably holding a glass of that expensive scotch Victoria insisted we stock, feeling like a king because he had finally killed the king. He thought this text message was the end of the war. He thought he had won because he had the votes, the suits, and the title. He did not understand that he was sitting in a car with no engine. I looked at the building one last time. I remembered laying the foundation. I remembered the day Coretta, my late wife, cut the ribbon. She had squeezed my hand and said, "This is for our boy Enoch. Keep it safe for him." I felt a sharp pain in my chest, but it wasn't a heart attack. It was the death of a hope. I had kept it safe for him, but I hadn't kept it safe from him. I typed my reply. Okay. I hit send. Then I put the truck in gear and drove away. I didn't go home. Home was empty now that Coretta was gone, and the silence there would only make me think about mercy. I wasn't in the mood for mercy. I drove 5 miles out of the city limits to a place called Big Mama's Diner. It was a relic, a place with vinyl seats patched with duct tape and coffee that tasted like battery acid. It was the kind of place Darnell wouldn't be caught dead in. It was perfect. I sat in the back booth, the one near the outlet. The waitress, a woman named Betty who had been serving me eggs since the 80s, poured me a cup without asking. "Rough day, Big E?" she asked. I just nodded. "You could say that, Betty. Just coffee tonight." I pulled my bag onto the table. It was an old canvas messenger bag stained with oil and grease. Inside was my laptop. It was a thick, heavy machine, a Dell Latitude that was at least 8 years old. Last Christmas, Victoria had laughed at it. We were at their mansion, a place I paid for, surrounded by their friends. She had seen me checking email on this machine and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Enoch, honestly, it's embarrassing. We're trying to position the company as a tech-forward logistics leader, and you're carrying around a brick from the Stone Age. Get an iPad like a normal person." Darnell had laughed with her. He had said, "Let him be Vic. Dad likes his antiques. He fits right in with them." They didn't know. They didn't know that while I was driving trucks in the 90s, spending lonely nights at rest stops in the middle of nowhere, I was teaching myself how to code. I didn't trust third-party software. I didn't trust cloud systems I couldn't control. I had built the Freeman Logistics tracking system myself, line by line, code by code, sitting in the dark with a flashlight in my mouth while my peers were sleeping. This laptop wasn't a brick. It was the skeleton key. I opened the lid. The screen flickered to life. I didn't log into the employee portal. I didn't go to the CEO dashboard. Those were the interfaces I had built for Darnell and the manager's pretty buttons, simple graphs, limited controls. I bypassed the user interface entirely. I opened the command terminal. The black screen with the blinking white cursor stared back at me. It felt like greeting an old friend. My fingers, thick and calloused from years of gripping steering wheels and changing tires, moved across the keyboard. I typed in the access credentials for the root admin. This was a layer of the system Darnell didn't even know existed. He thought the software was something we bought from a vendor. He never bothered to ask about the back end. He was too busy planning galas and networking with investors to care about how the trucks actually knew where to go. Access granted. The text appeared in green. I took a sip of the bitter coffee. It tasted like justice. I navigated to the asset management protocol. I saw the entire fleet mapped out in real time. 512 trucks moving across the country. Little green dots carrying food, electronics, and medical supplies. I saw the bank accounts linked to the automated payroll and fuel systems. I saw the security protocols for the 3 main distribution centers. Darnell and Victoria thought they owned all of this. They had the paperwork for Freeman Logistics, Inc., but there was a small legal technicality that I had put in place 10 years ago when I first let Darnell take the CEO chair. I did it because Coretta had asked me to give him a chance, but my gut had told me to keep a leash on him. Freeman Logistics, Inc. was an operating company. It managed the staff and the contracts, but the assets, the trucks, the land, the warehouses, and the proprietary software were owned by a separate entity, Enoch Holdings, LLC. Freeman Logistics leased everything from Enoch Holdings. The contract stated that the lease could be terminated immediately upon the removal of the founder from the board. It was a kill switch. And Darnell, in his arrogance, had never actually read the founding documents. He just signed where his lawyers told him to sign, and his lawyers were idiots he hired because they looked good in suits, not because they could read fine print. I typed the command, execute order 66. It was a little joke I made for myself years ago, a reference to a movie Darnell loved as a kid. The screen populated with a list of subsystems, fuel cards, gate security, ignition interlocks, bank transfers. I started with the money. Victoria was probably at dinner right now celebrating my firing. She liked a place downtown where the steaks cost more than a driver's weekly wage. She would be using the corporate black card. I typed the command to freeze all credit lines associated with Freeman Logistics. Status locked. Next, the fuel. Our drivers relied on fleet cards to fill up at stations across the country. Without those cards, the trucks stopped. I didn't want to hurt the drivers, my friends, but I knew this was the only way to make the bleeding stop. I sent a broadcast message to the drivers' private terminals bypassing the dispatch office. This is Big E. Operations are suspended due to a hostile takeover by management. Park your rig safely. Do not deliver. I will cover your lost wages personally. Stand by. Then I locked the fuel cards. Status denied. Then the warehouses. The distribution centers were equipped with smart locks that I had installed to prevent internal theft. Darnell loved them because he could open them with his phone. He didn't realize I could seal them from a diner 20 miles away. I entered the lockdown code. The heavy steel doors at the loading docks in Atlanta, Chicago, and Newark would be sliding shut right about now. The keypads would go dead. No one in, no one out. Status sealed. Finally, the software. The brain of the company. The system that tracked every package, every invoice, and every route. I didn't delete it. I wasn't a vandal. I simply changed the encryption key. I revoked the license for Freeman Logistics to access the Enoch Holdings intellectual property. On every computer screen in the headquarters, from the dispatch floor to Darnell's corner office, the screens would go black. A single message would appear, license expired, contact system administrator. I looked at the screen. A sea of red status bars confirmed the shutdown. The empire I built was now a fortress, and Darnell was locked outside in the cold. It had taken me 40 years to build it. It took me 12 minutes to shut it down. I closed the laptop. The diner was quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator and the clinking of Betty washing dishes. I felt a strange calmness. It wasn't happiness. It was the cold resolve of a man who knows he has just cut off his own arm to save his body from gangrene. I paid for my coffee with a $5 bill. "Keep the change, Betty," I said. She looked at me concerned. "You sure you're okay, Enoch? You look like you just saw a ghost." "I didn't see a ghost, Betty," I said, standing up and putting on my trucker hat. "I just buried one." I walked out to my truck. The night air was crisp. I got in, threw the laptop on the passenger seat, and turned the key. The engine roared to life, a sound I could trust. I checked my phone. It was starting. The screen lit up. Darnell. Then again. Darnell. Then a text from Victoria. Why is my card declined? Fix this immediately. Then Darnell again. Then the notifications from the company automated system alerting the CEO of critical failures. My phone buzzed against the dashboard plastic. Bzzzt, bzzzt, bzzzt. I didn't answer. I turned the volume off. I threw the phone onto the seat next to the laptop. I drove home in silence, the road stretching out before me. I knew what was coming tomorrow. The anger, the police, the lawyers, the tears. But for tonight I was done. I had replied, okay. And I meant it. It was going to be okay for me. For them, the nightmare was just beginning. The phone screen lit up the dark cab of the truck every few seconds, a strobe light of panic. 36 missed calls by the time I pulled into my driveway. I went inside, poured a glass of water, and slept like a baby. I woke up at 5 a.m. just as the sun was beginning to bleed through the blinds of my bedroom window. The house was quiet. It was the kind of heavy silence that usually signals peace, but today it felt like the calm before a hurricane. I sat up and reached for my phone on the nightstand. The screen was flashing like a warning beacon. 36 missed calls, 12 voicemails, 14 text messages. They were all from Darnell and Victoria. I did not smile. I did not feel a surge of victory. I simply felt the weight of the inevitable. I swung my legs out of bed and walked to the kitchen to start the coffee pot. While the water boiled, I decided to listen to the voicemails. They told a story of a morning that had gone very wrong very quickly. The first few messages were from Darnell. They started around 6 a.m. his time. Dad, call me back. The system is down. We cannot get the warehouse doors open. Then 10 minutes later, Dad, stop playing around. The drivers are lined up on the street and the gate codes are invalid. Fix it. By the 10th message, the tone had shifted from annoyance to genuine panic. Dad, the fuel cards are declining. We have 500 trucks stranded at pumps across the tri-state area. Drivers are threatening to walk. Pick up the phone. But the most telling message came from Victoria. I could hear the background noise of silverware clinking and low, polite conversation. She was obviously at a breakfast meeting. I knew exactly where she was. Every Tuesday she met with the regional directors of Global Corp at the Golden Spoon, a place where they served eggs Benedict that cost $40. Her voice was a hiss, low and venomous. Enoch, I do not know what you think you are doing, but my corporate card just got declined in front of the Vice President of Acquisitions. It says the account is frozen. Fix this immediately or I will have security drag you out of your house. I took a sip of my black coffee. It was hot and bitter just the way I liked it. I imagined the scene at the restaurant. Victoria sitting there in her tailored Chanel suit, forcing a smile while the waiter handed back her black card with that pitying look service workers save for people who pretend to be rich. She would have tried to play it off as a bank error. She would have pulled out another card, maybe the backup Visa. That one would have been declined too, because when I locked the assets, I did not just lock the trucks. I locked the credit lines backed by Enoch Holdings assets. She was sitting there trying to sell a company she could not even buy breakfast for. I sat down at my kitchen table and watched the phone ring again. It was the 37th call. The name on the screen said Darnell. I let it ring 3 times before I slid my thumb across the glass. "Hello, son," I said. My voice was calm, steady. It was the voice of a man who had nothing left to lose. Darnell did not say hello. He screamed. The sound was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "What did you do?" he yelled. His voice was cracking, breaking under the strain. "The entire operation is dead in the water. The warehouse smart locks are sealed shut. The inventory system is showing a fatal error. And the trucks. My God, the trucks. The GPS tracking is dark. We do not know where half our fleet is. Fix it, Dad. Turn it back on right now." I took another sip of coffee. I looked out the window at the oak tree I had planted when Darnell was born. It was strong and deeply rooted. Darnell was not. "I cannot do that," I said. "What do you mean you cannot do that?" he shouted. "You are the system administrator. You built this junk. Log in and undo whatever tantrum you threw last night." "I am not the administrator anymore, Darnell," I said. "You fired me. Remember, You sent me a text message. You said the board voted. You said I was out. Yes, you are fired, he screamed. That means you leave the office. It does not mean you burn the building down on your way out. This is sabotage. This is criminal. It is not sabotage, I said. It is repossession. Repossession, he sputtered. What are you talking about? I leaned back in my chair. The wood creaked. You fired me from Freeman Logistics, Inc., I said. That is your right as the CEO and chairman. But Freeman Logistics, Inc. does not own the trucks, Darnell. It does not own the warehouses. It does not own the software license. It does not even own the coffee machine in the break room. There was a silence on the other end of the line. It was the silence of a man who has walked off a cliff and just realized gravity exists. What he whispered. I told you to read the contracts 10 years ago, I said. I told you when I stepped down and let you play boss. Freeman Logistics is an operating company. It manages people, it manages contracts, but the assets, the hard assets, the things you can touch and the code that runs them, those belong to Enoch Holdings, LLC. And Enoch Holdings is 100% owned by me. That is a lie, he said, but his voice was weak. He knew it was not a lie. He just had never bothered to check. Freeman Logistics leases the assets from Enoch Holdings, I continued. The lease agreement has a clause. A very specific clause. Clause 4A. Termination of lease upon removal of founder. When you fired me, you terminated the lease, Darnell. You broke the contract. So I took my keys back. You cannot do that, he shouted. We have deliveries scheduled. We have contracts with Amazon, with Walmart. If we do not deliver, we get hit with penalties. We will go bankrupt in a week. That sounds like a problem for the CEO of Freeman Logistics, I said. Not for me. I am just a retired truck driver. Dad, please, he said. His voice shifted from anger to desperation. Victoria is going crazy. She had to call me to come pay her bill at the restaurant because all the cards are dead. She says the Global Corp deal is going to fall through if they see this mess. You are destroying our future. I did not destroy your future, son, I said. I built your future. I handed it to you on a silver platter. You and your wife decided it was not enough. You wanted to erase me from the picture. Well, I am erased. This is what the picture looks like without me. You have to turn it back on, he said. Just for today, let us get the deliveries out. We can talk about this. We can negotiate. There is nothing to negotiate, I said. You wanted to move on without me. Move on. Buy your own trucks. Build your own warehouses. Write your own code. I do not have the money for that, he screamed. You know I do not have the money. All the capital is tied up in... He stopped. He realized what he was about to say. All the capital was tied up in the assets I owned. Or it was spent on the lifestyle Victoria demanded. Exactly, I said. Dad, listen to me, he said. His voice dropped to a low, threatening tone I had never heard from him before. It sounded like her. It sounded like Victoria. If you do not unlock the system right now, I am going to make you regret it. I am not asking any more. Is that a threat, Darnell? I asked. It is a promise, he said. You think you are smart. You think you can hold us hostage with some old paperwork. You are an old man, Dad. You do not know how the world works anymore. We have lawyers. We have connections. You are going to turn those trucks back on, or you are going to rot in a cell. I looked at the phone. I felt a deep, profound sadness. Not fear. Sadness. My son was threatening to put his own father in jail because he was too incompetent to run the business he stole. Do what you have to do, Darnell, I said. I hung up. I sat there for a long time. The coffee in my cup went cold. I thought about the days when Darnell was a boy. I used to take him in the cab of the truck with me during the summers. He loved to pull the horn. He loved to look at the maps. He used to say, Daddy, when I grow up, I am going to drive the biggest truck in the world. I wondered where that boy went. I wondered when he died and this stranger took his place. I stood up to pour the cold coffee into the sink. My hands were steady. I washed the cup and placed it in the drying rack. I wiped the counter. I was just turning to go into the living room when I saw the flashing lights. Blue and red lights were bouncing off the walls of my kitchen. They were cutting through the morning sun. I walked to the front window and looked out. There were 3 police cruisers parked on my lawn. Not on the street. On the lawn. They had come in fast. I saw officers stepping out. They had their hands on their holsters. Then I saw Darnell's car. His black Range Rover pulled up behind the cruisers. He jumped out. He was wearing his expensive suit, but his tie was undone and his hair was wild. Victoria got out of the passenger side. She looked furious. She was pointing at my house, screaming something at the officers. I watched them. I did not run. I did not hide. I walked to the front door. I unlocked the deadbolt. I opened the door and stepped out onto the porch. The morning air was cold. The officers looked up. One of them, a sergeant I recognized from town, shouted, "Mr. Freeman, put your hands where I can see them." I raised my hands. I looked at Darnell. He was standing behind the police line looking at me with eyes full of hate. He had actually done it. He had called the police on his own father. He told them I was a hacker, I realized. He told them I was a disgruntled employee sabotaging the system. He did not tell them I was the owner. He played the victim. The naivety of it almost made me laugh. He thought the police could force me to type a password. He thought a badge and a gun could override a contract law. He was about to learn a very hard lesson about jurisdiction. I stood on my porch. My hands raised, my heart cold as stone. The neighbors were coming out of their houses. They were watching Enoch Freeman, the man who built this town's economy, being treated like a criminal. Victoria was smiling now. It was a tight, cruel smile. She thought she had won. She thought the sight of the police would break me. She thought I would run down the stairs crying and begging for mercy and unlock the millions of dollars she felt entitled to. I looked her in the eye. I did not blink. I waited for them to come up the steps. I had the paperwork in my safe. I had the truth on my side. But for now, I let them have their show. Because the higher they climbed on their high horse, the harder they were going to fall when I kicked the legs out from under it. The red and blue lights of the police cruisers were not flashing for a celebration. They were flashing for me. I stood on my porch, holding my coffee mug like a shield. I did not tremble. I did not run. I simply watched as 4 officers marched up my driveway with their hands hovering over their holsters. Behind them stood Darnell and Victoria. My son looked pale, his eyes darting around as if he were looking for an exit from a room he had just walked into. But Victoria looked triumphant. She stood with her arms crossed, her chin high, wearing a smile that was sharp enough to cut glass. She looked like a hunter who had finally cornered a wounded bear. "Mr. Freeman," the lead officer said. It was Sergeant Miller. I had known him since he was a rookie. He looked uncomfortable. "We received a complaint from the CEO of Freeman Logistics regarding unauthorized access to corporate servers and malicious destruction of digital property. We need you to step away from the door and put your hands where we can see them." I took a slow sip of my coffee. I could see the neighbors peeking through their curtains. Mrs. Gable next door looked terrified. I gave her a small nod to let her know I was not going to start a shootout. I stepped forward. I did not put the mug down. "Good morning, Sergeant Miller," I said. My voice was steady. It was the voice of a man who had faced down union busters and highway bandits in the 80s. "This seems like a lot of firepower for a computer dispute." "He is dangerous," Victoria shouted from the sidewalk. She pushed past Darnell and marched toward the porch. "Do not let him fool you with that sweet old grandfather act. He is a hacker. He compromised our entire mainframe. He is holding a multi-million-dollar company hostage because he is senile and bitter about being retired. Arrest him. He has the laptop inside. That is the weapon." Darnell tried to grab her arm, but she shook him off. She was enjoying this. This was her moment. She had spent 5 years tolerating me, enduring my presence at holidays, rolling her eyes at my stories. Now she thought she had the power to crush me. "He is mentally unstable," Victoria continued, looking directly at the sergeant. "He threatened us last night. He said he would destroy everything. You need to put him in handcuffs before he deletes more data. He is a criminal." The officers looked at me. I saw the doubt in their eyes. They saw an old black man in a flannel shirt and work boots. But they also heard the expensive lawyer talk coming from the white woman in the power suit. I looked at Darnell. He was staring at his shoes. He could not even look me in the eye while his wife tried to send me to jail. That hurt more than the handcuffs ever could. "I am not a criminal, Sergeant," I said. "And I am not a hacker. I am a landlord who just changed the locks because the tenants stopped paying the rent." Victoria laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Landlord. You do not own anything, Enoch. We own the company. We own the building. We own you. Officer, get that laptop." Sergeant Miller stepped closer. "Mr. Freeman, If you have a device that is disrupting a business, I have to confiscate it as evidence. Please do not make this difficult." I looked at him. I looked at the gun on his hip. I realized that in this moment the truth did not matter as much as the paperwork. I needed to show them the foundation of the house before they burned it down. "I will get the evidence, Sergeant," I said, "but it is not a laptop." I turned and walked into the house. 2 officers followed me closely, their hands on their tasers. I walked past the kitchen where Darnell used to eat cereal before school. I walked into my study. I did not go to the computer desk. I went to the wall safe behind the painting of Coretta. I spun the dial. Left, right, left. The heavy steel door clicked open. Inside, there was no cash. There were no diamonds. There was just a stack of manila folders that smelled like dust and old paper. I pulled out the one on the bottom. It was thick. The edges were yellowed. I remembered the day I signed these papers. It was 10 years ago. We were in a conference room downtown. Darnell was wearing his first expensive suit, looking at his reflection in the window. Coretta was holding my hand under the table. She had whispered to me, "Let him have the title Enoch. It makes him feel like a man." I had agreed. I made him CEO. I gave him the big chair, but I did not give him the keys to the kingdom. I kept the deed. I walked back out to the porch. The morning sun was higher now, casting long shadows across the lawn. Victoria was tapping her foot impatiently. "Well," she demanded, "where is the computer?" I ignored her. I handed the folder to Sergeant Miller. "What is this?" he asked. "Read the first page, Sergeant," I said. "Read the section highlighted in blue." He opened the folder. The paper crinkled. He adjusted his glasses. I watched his eyes move across the lines. I saw his eyebrows go up. Then I saw him frown. He looked up at Darnell, then back at the paper, then at Victoria. "This is a master lease agreement," Miller said, dated August 12, 2014. "So, what?" Victoria snapped. "It is old paperwork. It is irrelevant. It says here," Miller continued, his voice louder now, "that Freeman Logistics Incorporated is the lessee. And Enoch Holdings LLC is the lessor. It lists the assets, the commercial fleet, the intellectual property including the logistics software source code, the real estate at 4500 Industrial Way." He turned the page. "And here's the termination clause," Miller read. "In the event that Enoch Freeman is removed from the board of directors of Freeman Logistics, this lease is immediately null and void. All assets must be returned to the lessor within 24 hours. The silence on the lawn was absolute. A bird chirped somewhere in the distance. Victoria stopped tapping her foot. Her face went from red to white in the span of a second. She snatched the paper from Miller's hand. She read it frantically, her eyes darting back and forth. "This is fake," she hissed. "This is a forgery. Darnell, tell them this is fake." Darnell stepped forward. He looked at the paper. He looked at his signature at the bottom. It was his signature, a bold, looping scrawl he had practiced for hours when he first became CEO. He had signed it without reading it. He had been too busy planning his victory party. "It is real," Darnell whispered. His voice was hollow. "I remember signing a stack of compliance docs. I thought it was just tax stuff." "You idiot," Victoria screamed. She shoved the paper into his chest. "You signed away the company. You told me you owned it." "I did not sign away the company," Darnell stammered. I did not know he kept the assets separate." "He did not know because he never asked," I said. My voice was hard. I looked at Victoria. "You called me a hacker. You called me senile. But you are the ones trying to drive a stolen car. I did not hack your system. I revoked your license to use my software. I did not sabotage your trucks. I grounded my fleet because you fired the driver." Sergeant Miller took the folder back. He looked at Victoria with a different expression now. It was no longer the look of an officer helping a distressed citizen. It was the look of a man who realized he had been used as a pawn in a family squabble. "Mrs. Freeman," Miller said, his voice cold, "this is a civil matter. It is a contract dispute. There is no criminal activity here. Mr. Freeman has the legal right to control his property." "But he shut us down," Victoria shrieked. "We are losing millions." "Then I suggest you pay your rent or negotiate a new lease," Miller said. He signaled to his officers. "Let us go. We are done here." The police walked back to their cars. The lights turned off. The sirens remained silent. The neighbors went back inside, but I knew they were still watching from the windows. Victoria stood on my lawn. She looked small now. The power suit did not look powerful anymore. It looked like a costume. She looked at me with pure hatred. "You think you won?" she spat. "You are just a sad old man with a pile of junk trucks. We will sue you. We will bury you in court until you are dead." Darnell did not say anything. He was looking at the house he grew up in. He looked like he wanted to come inside and watch cartoons, but the door was locked. I took a step toward them. "Get off my property," I said. Just then, a black town car pulled up to the curb behind Darnell's Range Rover. The driver's door opened and a man stepped out. He was tall, thin, and wore a suit that cost more than Darnell's car. He carried a leather briefcase. It was Alistair, my lawyer, the only man in the city who knew where all the bodies were buried because he had helped me dig the holes. He walked up the driveway, his shoes clicking on the pavement. He ignored Victoria. He ignored Darnell. He walked straight to me and shook my hand. "Good morning," Enoch, Alistair said. "Sorry I am late. Traffic was murder." He turned to Darnell. He pulled a thick envelope from his briefcase. "Darnell Freeman?" Alistair asked. Darnell nodded, dumbfounded. "You have been served," Alistair said, slapping the envelope into Darnell's chest. "This is a formal demand for the immediate return of all assets belonging to Enoch Holdings. You have 24 hours to return 500 trucks, vacate 3 warehouses, and cease the use of all proprietary software. Failure to comply will result in a daily penalty of $100,000 per asset." Alistair checked his watch. "The clock started 5 minutes ago. I suggest you start driving." Victoria gasped. Darnell looked at the envelope as if it were a bomb. I just sipped my coffee. It was going to be a long day for them. For me, it was just Tuesday. I sat at my kitchen table with the laptop open in front of me. The screen displayed a grid of security camera feeds from the main distribution center. It was like watching a silent movie of a disaster. Darnell and Victoria had raced from my house to the yard thinking their physical presence would force the gears of industry to turn. They were wrong. The yard was a sea of chrome and steel that refused to move. 500 trucks were parked in perfect rows. Their engines were cold. The silence must have been deafening. I saw Darnell's Range Rover skid into the lot. He jumped out, waving his arms. He looked like a scarecrow trying to frighten away a storm. Victoria followed him. She was still wearing that power suit, but now it looked like a costume for a play that had been canceled. She marched toward a group of drivers who were standing near the dispatch office. These were men I had known for 20 years. Men like Silas, who had driven through blizzards to get medicine to hospitals. Men like Big Mike, who had missed his daughter's first steps to make a delivery deadline. They stood with their arms crossed. Their faces were made of stone. I turned up the volume on the remote audio feed. I had installed microphones at the gates years ago for security. Now they were my front row seat to the collapse. "Listen to me," Victoria screamed. Her voice was shrill, tinny through the speakers. "I am the chief strategy officer of this company. I am ordering you to get in your trucks and drive. We have schedules. We have clients. Move." The men did not move. They did not even blink. They looked at her the way a mountain looks at a gnat. "I will pay you," she shouted. She was desperate now. "I will double your day rate. I will give everyone a $500 cash bonus right now if you turn those keys. Who wants $500? She reached into her purse and pulled out a stack of bills. She waved them in the air. It was a disgusting display. She thought these men were dogs who would jump for a treat. She did not understand that loyalty is not a currency you can print. Silas stepped forward. He was a giant of a man with hands like shovels. He looked at the money. He looked at Victoria. Then he spit on the ground right next to her expensive Italian shoes. "Keep your money, lady," Silas said. His voice was a deep rumble. "My fuel card is declined. My gate pass is invalid. And my boss just sent a message saying operations are suspended." "I am your boss," Darnell shouted, stepping up beside his wife. He tried to look authoritative, but he just looked small. "I am the CEO. Big E is gone. He is fired. You work for me." Silas looked down at Darnell. He took a toothpick out of his mouth. "I drive for Freeman Logistics," Silas said. "And Freeman Logistics belongs to Big E. I do not know who you are, son, but you look like you are trespassing." The other drivers nodded. A murmur of agreement went through the crowd. Victoria looked around wild-eyed. She realized that her authority was an illusion. It existed only on paper, and paper does not drive 18-wheelers. "This is a strike," she shrieked. "This is an illegal union action. I will fire all of you. I will hire scabs. I will have you replaced by tomorrow morning." "Go ahead," Silas said. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out the keys to his rig. He tossed them. They glittered in the sun before landing with a heavy clatter at Victoria's feet. "Good luck finding 500 drivers certified for hazardous materials who know the routes by heart," Silas said. "And good luck starting that truck. The ignition is locked remotely. You can sit in it and make engine noises if you want." One by one, the other drivers followed suit. Keys rained down on the asphalt. Clink, clink, clink. It was the sound of my empire dismantling itself. Darnell watched the keys fall. He looked like he was going to be sick. He realized then that he did not run a company. He just sat in a chair. The power had never been his. It had been lent to him, and the loan had just been called in. Victoria stared at the pile of keys. She was shaking. She looked at Darnell. "Do something," she hissed. "Make them drive." "I cannot make them drive," Darnell whispered. He sounded defeated. Dad locked the ignitions. "Then hotwire them," she screamed. "Do something, you useless coward." The drivers started to laugh. It was a low, rumbling laughter that cut deeper than any insult. They turned their backs on the couple and started walking toward the gate. They were going home. They knew I would take care of them. They knew Big E always covered his people. Darnell stood there surrounded by millions of dollars of equipment that was now nothing more than expensive lawn ornaments. He looked at his watch. He knew what time it was. It was 10 in the morning. The delivery windows for the major retailers were closing. Then his phone rang. I watched on the screen as he pulled it from his pocket. I saw the color drain from his face. I knew who it was. It was the vice president of logistics for Megamart, our biggest client. They accounted for 60% of our revenue. I had negotiated that contract myself over a steak dinner 5 years ago. It had strict performance clauses. "Hello," Darnell answered. His voice cracked. I could not hear the other side of the call, but I did not need to. I could see Darnell wince as if he were being physically hit. "Yes, sir, I understand, sir," he stammered. "We are having a minor technical glitch, a system update. We will be back online in—" He stopped. He listened. He closed his eyes. "Sir, please," he begged. "The penalty clause is for catastrophic failure. This is just a delay. We can—" He pulled the phone away from his ear. The person on the other end was screaming loud enough for the microphone to pick up the distortion. "Contract canceled." The words were faint but clear. $500,000 a day. Every day the freight sits. We are suing for breach. Darnell dropped the hand holding the phone. He looked at Victoria. "They canceled," he whispered. "Megamart canceled. They are invoking the penalty. 500 grand a day, Victoria." Victoria looked at him. Her eyes were wide. She did the math. They did not have $500,000. They did not have $5,000. Her breakfast had been declined. "We are ruined," she whispered. Her voice was trembling. "We are going to lose the house. We are going to lose everything." She looked at the camera. She looked right at the lens mounted on the guard shack. She knew I was watching. She knew I was behind that black glass eye. She raised her middle finger. It was a gesture of defiance, but her hand was shaking so bad it looked more like a surrender. I closed the laptop. I did not feel joy. I felt a heavy finality. They had pushed and pushed until they fell off the edge. Now they were in free fall. I picked up my phone. I typed a text to Darnell. I wanted to make sure he understood the timeline. He thought the penalty was his biggest problem. He was wrong. The penalty was just money. What was coming next was legal annihilation. "The clock is ticking, son," I typed. "You have 12 hours to return my assets to my possession. If the trucks are not returned to Enoch Holdings by midnight, I will file charges for grand theft auto. 500 counts." I hit send. I imagined the phone buzzing in his hand. I imagined him reading the words. I imagined the realization sinking in that his father was not just teaching him a lesson. His father was at war. And in war, you do not stop until the enemy surrenders unconditionally. I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was high in the sky. It was a beautiful day. A perfect day for a reckoning. I had 12 hours to wait. I decided to make a sandwich. I would need my strength for the endgame. I was halfway through a ham sandwich when I heard the gravel crunch in the driveway. It was not the police this time. It was not a lawyer. It was Darnell's Range Rover again, but Darnell was not driving. Victoria was behind the wheel. She parked aggressively blocking the path to my garage. I watched through the kitchen window as she stepped out. She was not wearing her power suit anymore. She was wearing jeans and a soft sweater. Her hair was messy. She looked like a tired, stressed mother. It was a costume change so calculated it made my stomach turn. She walked around to the back seat and opened the door. She pulled out a small boy. It was Leo, my grandson. He was 8 years old. He was wearing his soccer uniform, the one I had bought him for his birthday last month. He was holding a soccer ball under his arm. He looked terrified. His eyes were red and puffy as if he had been crying for hours. Victoria bent down and whispered something in his ear. She pointed at my house. She pushed him forward. I felt a cold rage settle in my gut. They had tried the police. They had tried the lawyers. Now they were trying the nuclear option. They were using the boy. I unlocked the front door and stepped onto the porch. Victoria stayed by the car, leaning against the hood with her arms crossed. She did not say a word. She just watched Leo walk up the driveway. His little cleats clicked on the pavement. He stopped at the bottom of the stairs. He looked up at me. His lip was trembling. Grandpa Leo said. His voice was small and broken. Grandpa, why are you making us poor? The words hit me harder than any lawsuit ever could. They were not his words. An 8-year-old does not worry about being poor. An 8-year-old worries about missing cartoons or losing a toy. These were Victoria's words planted in his mouth like a poison seed. I sat down on the top step. I wanted to be on his level. I am not making you poor, Leo, I said gently. Who told you that? Mommy said you took all of Daddy's money. Leo sniffled. He wiped his nose with the back of his hand. She said you locked the bank and now we cannot buy food. She said I cannot go to soccer camp next week because Grandpa stole the money. I looked past him at Victoria. She was watching us intently. She did not look like a concerned mother. She looked like a director watching a scene unfold. She gave me a small, sad wave. It was a challenge. She was daring me to be the villain in front of the only person whose opinion I actually cared about. Grandpa, please, Leo cried. Tears started rolling down his cheeks again. I want to go to soccer camp. Please give Daddy his money back. I promise I will be good. I will not ask for toys. Just please do not make us leave our house. Mommy said we have to live in the car if you do not fix it. It took every ounce of strength I had not to run down those stairs and pick him up. I wanted to tell him that his father was a thief and his mother was a liar. I wanted to tell him that I had millions of dollars sitting in accounts that had his name on them. But I could not. Not yet. I looked at his face. He looked so much like Darnell did at that age. The same dark eyes, the same stubborn chin. I remembered the day Darnell was 8. I had taken him in the truck for a cross-country haul. We had slept in the sleeper cab and eaten jerky and watched the sunrise over the Rockies. I had promised myself then that my son would never know the struggle I knew. I had kept that promise, and look where it got us. Leo stepped closer. He dropped the soccer ball. It rolled down the driveway and stopped at Victoria's feet. She did not pick it up. Grandpa, do you not love us anymore? Leo asked. I felt a crack in my chest. It was a physical pain, sharp and deep. I looked at the boy I loved more than life itself standing there begging for his future because his parents were too proud to earn theirs. I almost broke. I almost reached into my pocket, took out my phone, and unlocked everything. I almost gave up the war just to stop the tears on his face. I closed my eyes for a second. I saw Coretta, my wife. She died 4 years ago. She was the only person who could ever keep me in line. On her deathbed, she had grabbed my hand. Her grip was weak, but her eyes were fierce. Enoch, she had whispered, do not let the bitterness eat the fruit. Take care of the boy. Take care of the grandbabies. Promise me. I had promised her. I had sworn to her that I would protect this family, and for the last 4 years I thought protecting them meant giving them everything they wanted. I thought it meant covering Darnell's mistakes. I thought it meant ignoring Victoria's spending. I thought it meant being the silent bank account that never ran dry. But looking at Leo now, I realized I had broken my promise to Coretta. I had not protected them. I had crippled them. I had raised a son who could not stand on his own 2 feet and who was now using his own child as a human shield. If I gave in now, if I unlocked the accounts, Leo would grow up to be just like them. He would learn that tears are currency. He would learn that manipulation is a valid business strategy. He would learn that he did not have to work for anything because Grandpa would always bail him out. That was not protection. That was corruption. I opened my eyes. I looked at Leo. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to tell him that soccer camp was paid for 10 times over. I wanted to tell him that he would never be homeless as long as I drew breath. I stood up. I was about to walk down the stairs to comfort him when I saw it. Victoria was holding her phone. She was holding it chest-high, lens facing us. She was not texting. She was not calling Darnell. She was live streaming. I saw the little red light on the screen case. I saw the way she was angling her body to get the best shot of her crying son and his cold, heartless grandfather. She was broadcasting this moment to the world. She was using her son's trauma to win the court of public opinion. The wave of sadness vanished. It was replaced by a cold, hard clarity. This was not a family moment. This was a hostage video. I walked down the stairs. I walked past Leo. I did not stop until I was 2 feet away from Victoria. She flinched. She lowered the phone slightly, but she kept recording. "Turn it off," I said. My voice was low. It was the voice I used when a broker tried to cheat me on a shipping rate. She smiled that tight, cruel smile. "The world needs to see this, Enoch," she said. "They need to see what kind of man denies his own grandson food. Say hello to Facebook Live. We have 500 viewers." I looked into the lens. I did not blink. "Hello, everyone," I said. "I am Enoch Freeman. And this woman is using a child as a prop because she refuses to get a job." Victoria gasped. She tried to back away, but she was pinned against the car. "You cut the act, Victoria," I said. "I am not speaking to the camera. I am speaking to you. You think you can shame me. You think you can use that boy to break me. You made a miscalculation." I pointed a finger at her. It was a thick finger scarred from years of changing tires. "I set up an educational trust for Leo the day he was born," I said. "It has enough money in it to send him to Harvard twice. I am the sole trustee. It is discretionary. That means I decide if he gets it." Victoria's eyes went wide. She knew about the trust, but she did not know the terms. She thought it was automatic. "If you do not turn that phone off right now," I continued, "I will dissolve that trust. I will take every dime out of his college fund and I will donate it to the Truckers Union charity. And I will make sure everyone watching this video knows that you cost your son his education because you wanted to play the victim on the internet." She froze. The phone wavered in her hand. She looked at the screen where the comments were probably scrolling by. Then she looked at me. She saw that I meant it. She saw that the ATM was not just closed, it was being dismantled. She ended the stream. She shoved the phone into her pocket, her face twisted into a mask of pure, ugly rage. "You are a monster," she hissed. "You would punish a child to hurt me." "I am not punishing him," I said. "I am saving him from you. Now get off my property before I call Sergeant Miller back here to arrest you for trespassing." She let out a scream of frustration. She marched around the car. She grabbed Leo by the arm. She yanked him so hard he stumbled and almost fell on the gravel. "Get in the car," she snapped at him. Leo looked up at her confused. "Mommy, you said Grandpa would fix it." "Shut up, Leo," she yelled. "Just get in the car." She opened the back door and shoved him inside. She did not buckle him in. She did not wipe his tears. She threw him into the leather seat like he was a bag of groceries she had decided to return. She slammed the door. She got into the driver's seat and started the engine. She peeled out of the driveway, tires spinning, sending gravel flying onto my lawn. I watched them go. I saw Leo's face pressed against the rear window looking back at me. He looked so lonely. I stood there for a long time after the dust settled. I realized then that Victoria did not love that boy. Not really. She loved what he represented. He was an heir, he was leverage, he was an accessory, but she did not love him enough to protect him from her own greed. I went back inside. I sat at my computer. I opened the file for Leo's trust. I did not dissolve it. I locked it. I added a clause that no funds could be dispersed until he was 25 years old, unless approved by me personally. No money for parents, no money for guardians. Only for Leo. They had crossed the line. They had brought the innocent into the war zone. Now I had to make sure the war zone did not destroy the innocent. I closed the laptop. The house was silent again. But now the silence was not heavy. It was focused. I had 12 hours left on my deadline, and I had a feeling the next move was going to be desperate, too. Desperate people make mistakes, and I would be waiting. The clock on my wall read 2 in the afternoon. At the corporate headquarters of Freeman Logistics, it was Judgment Day. I was not there physically, but thanks to the surveillance system I had installed to monitor employee safety, I had a front-row seat to the desperation of my son and his wife. They were in the main glass-walled conference room. It was the room where I had signed the biggest deals of my life. It was the room where I had shaken hands with union bosses and senators. Now it was the room where Darnell and Victoria were trying to sell a corpse. Sitting across from them were three men in gray suits. They were auditors from Global Corp, the massive conglomerate that had been sniffing around my company for months. Victoria had orchestrated this meeting. She had expedited it. She knew the walls were closing in. She knew the trucks were parked, the warehouses were locked, and the drivers were gone. Her only play left was to sell the company shell before Global Corp realized it was empty. She wanted to sign the papers, take the buyout check, and run before the ink dried. I watched Darnell on the screen. He was sweating. He kept wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. He was sliding papers across the mahogany table. These were the financials, or at least they were the financials Darnell wanted them to see. They were beautiful, colorful spreadsheets showing projected growth revenue streams and asset valuations. They were fiction. They were a fairy tale written by a man who had never changed a tire in his life. Victoria was doing the talking. She was leaning forward, her hands clasped on the table. She was using all her buzzwords: synergy, scalability, market dominance. She was smiling that shark smile, trying to hypnotize the auditors into signing the check. She was telling them that the current operational halt was a planned system upgrade, a strategic pause to implement new protocols. She was lying with a grace that was almost impressive if it were not so disgusting. The lead auditor, a man with glasses thick enough to see into the future, was not smiling. He was tapping a pen on the table. He looked skeptical. He asked about the fleet status. He asked about the lease agreements. Darnell stammered. He looked at Victoria for help. She cut in smoothly, deflecting the question, talking about brand equity and customer loyalty. I sat back in my chair at home. I took a sip of water. It was time to join the meeting. I opened a new window on my laptop. I accessed the company's internal financial server. Darnell and Victoria were presenting data from a partitioned drive, a sandbox I had created years ago for training purposes. They thought it was the real database. They thought they had scrubbed the numbers. They thought they had hidden the rot. But I was the administrator. I controlled the flow of information. With a few keystrokes, I redirected the feed on the conference room screen. I disabled the simulation view and enabled the live raw ledger. On the big screen behind Darnell, the beautiful, colorful charts flickered. They disappeared. In their place, columns of raw data appeared. Red numbers. Rows and rows of red numbers scrolling down like blood dripping from a wound. I saw the lead auditor stop tapping his pen. He squinted at the screen. He leaned forward. Darnell turned around. I saw his back stiffen. Victoria gasped. The numbers on the screen were not projections. They were the truth. And the truth was a $2 million hole in the operating budget. For 3 years, I had watched that hole grow. I knew exactly where the money went. It went to a shell company called V&D Consulting, registered in the Cayman Islands. It went to a luxury car dealership in Miami. It went to a private jet charter service. It went to Victoria's closet. Darnell had been siphoning operational funds to pay for the lifestyle his wife demanded. He was embezzling from his own future. I had known about it since the first wire transfer. It started small, 5,000 here, 10,000 there. Darnell thought he was clever. He thought he was burying the transactions under miscellaneous expenses and vendor retainers. He did not know that I reviewed every single line item every Sunday night after church. I should have stopped him then. I should have fired him 3 years ago when he bought that Porsche with money meant for truck maintenance. But I didn't. I was weak. I was a father who remembered holding his baby boy in the hospital. I was a widower who remembered promising his dying wife to take care of our son, so I became his accomplice. Every month when Darnell stole $10,000, I would transfer $10,000 from my personal savings into the company account. I marked it as founder's contribution. I plugged the holes he dug. I balanced the books so the employees would get paid so the vendors wouldn't sue, so the IRS wouldn't come knocking. I told myself I was protecting the legacy. I told myself he would grow out of it. I told myself he would eventually learn to be a man. I was wrong. I wasn't raising a man. I was funding a parasite. But yesterday, when he fired me, he cut off his lifeline. He didn't just remove me from the board. He removed the man who was secretly paying his bills. Without my monthly injections of cash, the reality of his theft was laid bare. The ledger on that screen showed the deficit in all its ugly glory. Negative $2 million, unaccounted funds, unauthorized transfers. I zoomed in on the camera feed. I wanted to see their faces. The lead auditor stood up. He wasn't looking at the charts anymore. He was looking at Darnell with the cold, hard eyes of a man who hunts fraud for a living. "Mr. Freeman," the auditor said. His voice was picked up clearly by the conference room microphone. according to these live figures which just updated, this company is technically insolvent. There are $2 million in outgoing transfers to an entity called V&D Consulting. Can you explain the nature of these services? Darnell tried to speak, but no sound came out. He looked at Victoria. Victoria was staring at the screen, her face pale as a sheet. She knew what V&D stood for. Victoria and Darnell. It was her shell company. She had been so arrogant she put her initials on the crime. Those are strategic advisory fees, Victoria stammered. Her voice was an octave higher than usual. $2 million in advisory fees, the auditor repeated. For a logistics company with margins this thin, that is not advisory. That is extraction. He opened his laptop. He typed furiously for a moment. Then he looked up. I just ran a quick search on V&D Consulting, he said. It is a shell entity with no employees, no website, and a registered agent in the Caymans. This looks like a classic embezzlement scheme. It is a mistake, Darnell shouted, standing up. His chair fell over backward with a loud crash. It is a glitch. My father hacked the system. He is trying to frame us. The auditor closed his laptop with a snap. Mr. Freeman, we are done here, he said. Global Corp does not acquire crime scenes. We acquire businesses. This meeting is over, he signaled to his team. They gathered their papers. They did not shake hands. They did not say goodbye. They walked toward the door. Wait, Victoria screamed, running after them. Please, you do not understand. We can explain. The assets are real. The brand is strong. The auditor stopped at the door. He turned around. He looked at Darnell and Victoria with pure disgust. You tried to sell us a company with locked assets, a striking workforce, and a cooked ledger, he said. That is securities fraud. That is attempting to obtain money under false pretenses across state lines. That is a federal offense. He paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. We are legally obligated to report this to the Securities and Exchange Commission and the FBI, he said. My legal team will be filing a report within the hour. Good luck. He walked out. The heavy glass door swung shut behind him. The sound echoed in the empty room. Darnell and Victoria stood there alone. The red numbers on the screen continued to scroll behind them, a digital ticker tape of their destruction. Darnell sank into his chair. He put his head in his hands. He looked small. He looked like a child who had broken a vase and knew a beating was coming. Victoria did not sit. She stood frozen, staring at the door. Her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. She was vibrating with rage. She turned slowly to look at Darnell. You idiot, she hissed. You told me the books were clean. You told me your father didn't know about the transfers. I thought they were clean, Darnell whispered. I don't know how he did it. He fixed it. He always fixed it. He didn't fix it this time, Victoria screamed. She grabbed a crystal pitcher of water from the table and threw it. It shattered against the wall, glass shards exploding everywhere. He exposed us. He showed them everything. She walked over to Darnell. She loomed over him. You need to fix this, she said. You need to get that money back. I am not going to prison because you are too stupid to hide a paper trail. I don't have the money, Darnell cried. You spent it, Victoria. The house, the cars, the jewelry. It's gone. Then find it, she yelled. Ask your father. Beg him. I don't care. Just fix it. She grabbed her purse and stormed out of the room, leaving Darnell alone in the wreckage of his ambition. I watched him for a moment longer. I felt a pang of pity, but I strangled it. He had made his choice. He had chosen the thief over the father. Now he had to live with the thief. I closed the browser window. The show was over. The justice was just beginning. I stood up to stretch my legs. My back was stiff. I walked to the kitchen to get a glass of water. As I reached for a glass, my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text message. But it wasn't from Darnell. It wasn't from Victoria. It was an automated alert from my personal bank. Urgent. Your personal checking and savings accounts have been frozen due to suspicious activity linked to a federal investigation regarding Freeman Logistics. Please contact the fraud department immediately. I stared at the screen. Darnell hadn't just exposed himself. By dragging my name into his mess by claiming I was a hacker framing him, he had triggered a blanket freeze on everything associated with the Freeman name. He had pulled the pin on a grenade and dropped it in our laps. I wasn't worried about the money. I had cash. I had the safe. But this meant the war had escalated to a new front. The government was involved now. And the government didn't care about family feuds. They cared about indictments. I put the phone down. I looked at the picture of Coretta on the fridge. Hold on, baby, I whispered. It is going to get ugly before it gets beautiful. I went back to my desk. I had one more call to make. If the FBI was coming, I needed to make sure they knocked on Darnell's door first, and I needed to make sure that when they did, Victoria wouldn't be there to answer it. She was a rat, and rats flee sinking ships. I needed to trap her before she reached the lifeboats. The sun went down over the city, but there was no rest for the wicked. Inside the sprawling mansion that my money had bought, the silence of the defeat at the office did not last long. I was sitting in my study at home watching the security feed from Darnell's living room. I had installed the system myself 3 years ago when they claimed they were worried about burglars. I never told them that the server backed up to my private cloud. I watched as the front door slammed open. Darnell walked in first. He looked like a man walking to the gallows. He loosened his tie and threw his jacket on the sofa. He went straight to the bar cart and poured a glass of whiskey. His hands were shaking so badly the crystal decanter rattled against the glass. Victoria followed him in. She did not look defeated. She looked like a bomb that had just detonated. She threw her purse onto the floor. It slid across the marble tiles and hit the wall with a dull thud. She marched over to Darnell and slapped the glass out of his hand. The whiskey splashed onto the white rug. The glass shattered. "You are useless!" she screamed. Her voice was not the polished, cultured tone she used at board meetings. It was a guttural shriek. "You are a pathetic excuse for a man. I handed you the deal of a lifetime. I set up the meeting. I cooked the books. I did everything. All you had to do was sit there and look like a CEO. And you could not even do that." Darnell looked at the broken glass. He did not get angry. He just looked tired. "It was not my fault, Victoria," he said quietly. "Dad hacked the system. He showed them the real numbers. How was I supposed to know he could do that?" "Because you should know your own company, you idiot," she yelled. She grabbed a vase from the side table. It was a Ming vase replica that cost $5,000. She threw it at the wall. It exploded into blue and white shrapnel. "You have been the CEO for 10 years, she spat, "and you do not know how the software works. You do not know who owns the trucks. You do not know anything. You just sat in the big chair and spent the money I told you to spend. You are a child playing dress-up in your father's suit, and now the suit does not fit." I watched Darnell flinch. He sat down heavily on the sofa, putting his head in his hands. "Victoria, stop," he begged. "We can fix this. We just need to figure out a way to pay back the $2 million. If we put the money back, maybe Global Corp will come back to the table. We can sell the house. We can sell the cars." Victoria laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Sell the house," she mocked. "You moron. The house is leveraged to the hilt. We have 3 mortgages on this place. The cars are leased. We do not own anything. We are underwater, Darnell. We are drowning, and you are talking about selling the water." She paced back and forth in front of him like a caged tiger. Her eyes were wild. The mask of the loving, supportive wife had completely disintegrated. Underneath was just raw, unadulterated greed. "I should have listened to my mother," she said. "She told me you were soft. She told me you were a mama's boy who got lucky. I thought I could mold you. I thought I could make you into a shark. But you are just a minnow, Darnell. You are bait." Darnell looked up. There were tears in his eyes. "I loved you," he whispered. "I did everything for you. I embezzled that money for you. I bought you the jewelry. I took you to Paris. I betrayed my father for you. And look where it got us," she screamed. "We are facing federal indictments. We are broke. And your father is probably laughing at us right now. You chose me over him because you thought I was the winning horse. Well, guess what, Darnell? You bet wrong. And now the track is closed." She walked over to the fireplace. There was a portrait hanging above the mantel. It was a picture of the two of them on their wedding day. She looked happy in the photo. She looked adoring. She reached up and ripped it off the wall. She smashed it over the back of a chair. The frame cracked. The glass shattered. "I am done," she said. "I am done pretending you are adequate. I am done pretending this family is worth my time. I am getting out before the FBI knocks on that door." Darnell stood up. He looked scared. "What do you mean you are getting out?" he asked. "We are in this together, Vic. V&D Consulting. That is us. Victoria and Darnell." Victoria stopped pacing. She looked at him with a cold pity that was worse than her anger. She walked over to him and poked him in the chest with a manicured finger. "You really are stupid, aren't you?" she said softly. "V&D does not stand for Victoria and Darnell." Darnell blinked. "What?" It stands for Victoria and Diamonds, she said. Or Victoria and Dollars. Or Victoria and Departure. It stands for whatever I want it to stand for, because my name is the only one on the signatory card for the Cayman account. Darnell froze. The color drained from his face, leaving him gray and ashen. No, he whispered. We opened that account together. I signed the papers. You signed the papers I gave you, she said, just like you signed the lease with your father without reading it. You really have a problem with reading the fine print, Darnell. I set up V&D Consulting as a sole proprietorship under my maiden name. You are not an owner. You are not a partner. You are just the idiot who transferred the money. She turned and walked toward the stairs. That money is my severance package for putting up with you and your boring family for 5 years, she called over her shoulder. $2 million is cheap for the time I wasted. Darnell ran after her. He grabbed her arm at the bottom of the stairs. You cannot do this, he shouted. That is company money. That is stolen money. If you take it, I will take the fall alone. I will go to prison. Victoria looked at his hand on her arm. She looked at his face. Her expression was devoid of any emotion. It was blank. Let go of me, Darnell, she said. No, he cried. You have to give it back. We have to pay Dad back. She slapped him. It was a hard, sharp crack that echoed in the high-ceilinged foyer. Your father is not going to get paid back, she said, and neither are you. That money is already gone, Darnell. I moved it to a secure account in Switzerland 10 minutes after the audit meeting ended. It is out of reach. And so am I. She pulled her arm free. She looked at him one last time. You want advice, she said. Call a lawyer, a public defender, because that is all you can afford now. She ran up the stairs. I heard her footsteps pounding down the hallway to the master bedroom. Darnell stood at the bottom of the stairs holding his cheek. He looked like a man who had been hollowed out. He looked like a ghost haunting his own life. I watched as Victoria came back down 20 minutes later. She was dragging 2 large Louis Vuitton suitcases. She was wearing a trench coat and sunglasses even though it was night. She did not look at Darnell. She walked straight to the front door. Darnell blocked her path. Where are you going? He asked. His voice was a whisper. The airport, she said. Private charter. One way. You are leaving me, he said. Just like that. Just like that, she said. She pushed past him. She opened the door. The night air rushed in. Victoria, wait, he pleaded. What about us? What about the baby we talked about having? Victoria stopped. She turned around. She lowered her sunglasses. There was never going to be a baby, Darnell, she said. I have been on birth control since the honeymoon. I would never bring a child into this mess. She stepped out into the night. The door slammed shut. The sound was final. It was the sound of a coffin lid closing. Darnell stood in the foyer. He was alone. The house was big and dark and empty. The expensive furniture, the art on the walls, the crystal chandelier. It all looked like junk now. It was the debris of a shipwreck. He walked into the living room. He sat down on the sofa amidst the broken glass and the spilled whiskey. He put his head back and stared at the ceiling. He sat there for hours. The lights in the house automatically dimmed as the smart home system went into night mode. He was sitting in the dark. I watched him. I did not feel satisfaction. I did not feel vindicated. I felt the deep, aching pain of a father watching his son bleed. I had warned him. I had told him she was trouble. I had told him to read the contracts. I had told him to work hard. He had ignored everything. And now he was learning the lesson in the hardest way possible. I looked at the clock. It was 3 a.m. My phone rang. I knew who it was before I looked at the screen. I picked it up. Dad. The voice was unrecognizable. It was thick with tears and snot and booze. It was the voice of a child who had woken up from a nightmare. Dad, are you there? I am here, Darnell, I said. She took it, Dad, he sobbed. She took it all. The money, the accounts. She told me she never loved me. She said I was a mark. Dad, I am going to prison. The FBI is going to come for me. I have nothing, Dad. I have absolutely nothing. I listened to him cry. It was a raw, ugly sound. It was the sound of a man hitting rock bottom. I am so sorry, Dad, he cried. I am so sorry. I should have listened. I should have never... I ruined everything. I let him cry. I let him pour it all out. I let him feel the full weight of his choices. He needed to feel it. He needed to burn so that he could be forged into something new. When the sobbing subsided to heavy breathing, I spoke. "Are you done?" I asked. "Yes," he whispered. "Good," I said. "Now wipe your face, get in your car, and meet me at the old truck yard on 4th Street. "Why?" he asked. "Because you are right," I said. "You have nothing. And when a man has nothing, he has two choices. He can lie down and die, or he can stand up and fight." I hung up the phone. I stood up and grabbed my keys. I grabbed the file Alistair had given me earlier that day, the file that contained the evidence my private investigator had gathered on Victoria, the evidence Darnell did not know existed. I was going to save my son. But first I had to make sure the thief did not get away with the loot. I walked out to my truck. The engine roared to life. It was time to go to work. The old truck yard on 4th Street was a graveyard of rust and memories. It was where I bought my first rig 40 years ago. It was where I taught Darnell how to change a transmission when he was 12. Now it was just a lot filled with the skeletons of 18-wheelers that were too old to run, but too valuable to scrap. The rain had turned the dirt into a thick black slurry of mud and motor oil. I parked my truck facing the center of the lot and left the headlights on. The beams cut through the downpour like prison searchlights. I sat on the hood and waited. The rain soaked my jacket, but I did not feel the cold. I felt only the burning heat of the task ahead. Darnell arrived 10 minutes late. He was driving a rental sedan, likely paid for with the last few dollars on a credit card that had not yet been frozen. He parked next to me. He stepped out of the car. He was still wearing the suit from the office, but it was ruined. The fabric was stained with sweat and alcohol. His tie was gone. His shoes, which cost more than a driver makes in a week, sank immediately into the muck. He walked toward me, shielding his eyes from the glare of my headlights. He looked like a man who had been hunted for sport. He stopped 5 feet away from me. He tried to speak, but his voice failed him. He looked at the ground. Then he did something that broke my heart and hardened my resolve all at once. He dropped to his knees. He sank into the mud, his expensive pants soaking up the filth of the yard. He put his hands on his face, and he began to sob. It was a low, guttural sound that echoed off the rusted metal of the dead trucks surrounding us. "Dad," he choked out. "Dad, please help me. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I did not know. I swear I did not know she was doing this. I just wanted to make you proud. I wanted to show you I could be big like you. Now I am going to prison. I am going to lose everything. Please, Dad, just tell me what to do. I will do anything." I looked down at him. I saw the little boy who used to run around this yard chasing stray dogs. I saw the teenager who promised me he would study hard. And I saw the man who had let a woman turn him into a criminal. I wanted to reach down and pull him up. I wanted to hug him and tell him I would write a check and make the bad men go away. But I knew that if I did that, I would kill him. If I saved him the easy way, he would never learn to stand. He would spend the rest of his life on his knees waiting for someone else to pay his bill. I slid off the hood of the truck. My boots landed heavily in the mud. I walked over to him. I did not offer him a hand. I stood over him, blocking the rain. "Get up," I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the sound of the storm. Darnell looked up at me, his face streaked with mud and tears. "Dad, please," he begged. I said, "Get up," I repeated. Men of the Freeman bloodline do not kneel. We do not beg. We stand on our feet even when the ground is shaking. "Get up, Darnell." He struggled to his feet. He was shaking. He wiped his face with a muddy hand, smearing the dirt across his cheek. He looked pathetic, but he was standing. I reached into my truck and pulled out the file Alistair had given me. It was wrapped in plastic to protect it from the rain. I handed it to him. "What is this?" Darnell asked, his hands trembling as he took it. "That is your salvation," I said, "and it is also your shame. Open it." He tore the plastic. He opened the folder. He squinted to read the documents in the dim light of the headlamps. "This is the forensic accounting report my private investigator compiled," I explained. "Look at page 4. Look at the wire transfers." Darnell looked. I saw his eyes widen. "V&D Consulting," he whispered. "But Victoria said, she said it was a joint account. She said we were building a nest egg." "Keep reading," I said. "Look at the beneficiary." He turned the page. He read the name, Victoria Klein, her maiden name. "She never added you to the account, Darnell," I said. "She forged your signature on the corporate withdrawal slips, but the deposit slips only have her name. She was not building a nest egg with you. She was building a parachute for herself. She was stealing the money and setting you up to take the fall. If the FBI walks into your office tomorrow, they will see your signature on the outgoing money and her name nowhere near the company records. You are the patsy, son. You are the fool she was going to trade for her freedom." Darnell dropped the file. The papers scattered in the mud. He stared at me. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. He had betrayed his father for a woman who was actively framing him for a federal crime. "She played me," he whispered. "She never loved me. She loved your access," I said. "She loved the checkbook I gave you. But she never respected you because you never made her respect you. You gave her everything she asked for without asking where it was going. You thought love was saying yes. Love is knowing when to say no." He looked at the scattered papers. The rain was washing the ink away. "I am going to prison, Dad," he said. His voice was flat, devoid of hope. "Even if she took the money, I signed the checks. I authorized the transfers. I am guilty." "You are guilty of being stupid," I said, "but you are not guilty of being the mastermind." I picked up the key document from the mud. It was a printout of an email chain between Victoria and a banker in Zurich. "This proves intent," I said. "This proves she orchestrated the laundering. This proves she coerced you. Alistair says we can cut a deal with the prosecutor. We can get you immunity or at least a suspended sentence if you give them the big fish." Darnell looked at me. Hope flickered in his eyes. "You can save me?" he asked. I shook my head. "I cannot save you," I said. "I can only give you the weapon. You have to pull the trigger." "What do you mean?" he asked. "I mean the police need more than papers," I said. "Papers can be argued in court. Papers can be explained away by expensive lawyers. The police need a confession. They need to hear her say it. They need to hear her admit that she set you up and that she has the money." Darnell stepped back. "You want me to wear a wire?" I stepped closer to him. I grabbed his shoulders. His suit was soaked. He felt thin, frail. "She is at the Regency Hotel downtown," I said. "My investigator tracked her phone. She is waiting for her private jet to clear customs for a flight to Zurich in the morning. If she gets on that plane, she is gone, Darnell. The money is gone. And you will spend the next 15 years in a federal cell wondering why you were such a coward." "I cannot do it," he said. "I cannot face her. She terrifies me, Dad. She destroys everything she touches. She destroyed you because you let her," I said. "She destroyed this family because we let her. Tonight it stops. Tonight you walk into that hotel room not as the husband she whipped, but as the man who is going to put her in a cage." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small black device. It was a digital recorder no bigger than a matchbox. "You are going to put this in your pocket," I said. "You are going to go to her room. You are going to beg. You are going to cry. You are going to play the broken man she thinks you are. You are going to ask her why she did it. You are going to get her to gloat. And when she tells you the truth, you are going to walk out the door and hand this to the federal agents waiting in the hallway." Darnell looked at the recorder. He looked at his hands. He looked at the mud on his knees. He took a deep breath. He looked up at me. For the first time in years, I saw a spark of anger in his eyes. It was not the petulant anger of a child. It was the cold resolve of a man who has been wronged. "Give it to me," he said. I handed him the recorder. He put it in his breast pocket. He buttoned his jacket. He ran his hands through his wet hair. He tried to wipe the mud off his face, but it just smeared. "Good," I said. "Leave the mud. Let her see the filth. Let her see what she did to you. It will make her confident. And confidence makes people careless." We got into my truck. I did not let him drive his rental. I wanted him to ride in the vehicle that built the empire he almost destroyed. We drove to the city in silence. The rain hammered against the roof. The city lights appeared on the horizon, a glowing grid of possibilities and dangers. I looked over at Darnell. He was staring out the window, his jaw set. He was terrified. I could smell the fear on him, but he was not asking to turn back. We pulled up a block away from the Regency Hotel. It was a tower of glass and light, a place for people who had everything and people who had nothing left to lose. I parked in the shadow of an alley. The FBI agents Alistair had contacted were already inside, I told him. They are monitoring the hallway, but they cannot go into the room without probable cause. You are the probable cause. Darnell nodded. He opened the door. The cold wind rushed into the cab. "Dad," he said. He did not look at me. "Yeah, son. If this goes wrong, if she has a gun, or if she calls security, If this goes wrong, I said I will be right behind you. I am not letting you fall again." He nodded. He stepped out of the truck. He slammed the door. He began to walk toward the hotel entrance. He walked with a limp, his expensive shoes ruined, his suit hanging off him like a shroud. He looked like a ghost walking back into the haunted house to confront the demon that killed him. I watched him go. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I had sent my boy into the lion's den. I prayed that the lion was full of pride and that my son was finally hungry enough to bite back. I waited until he disappeared through the revolving doors. Then I put the truck in gear and drove to the service entrance. I had one more card to play if things went south, but tonight Darnell had to stand alone. I sat in the cab of my truck listening to the static hiss of the audio feed coming from the device in Darnell's pocket. The rain was still hammering against the windshield, creating a blur of city lights and shadows. I watched the entrance of the Regency Hotel like a hawk waiting for a field mouse to make a mistake. Darnell had been inside for 10 minutes. To me, it felt like 10 years. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles aching from the tension. I knew the FBI agents were already in the stairwell. I knew Alistair had set the stage. But Darnell was the one on the tightrope, and there was no net. Finally, the static cleared, and I heard the sound of a heavy door creaking open. "What are you doing here?" Victoria's voice came through the speaker, clear and cold. I could hear the disgust dripping from every syllable. She did not sound afraid. She sounded annoyed, like she had found a stray dog on her porch. "Please," Victoria, Darnell said. His voice was trembling perfectly. He sounded broken. He sounded pathetic. It was the performance of his life. "Please, just let me talk to you. I have nowhere else to go. Dad kicked me out. The bank took my cards. I am covered in mud, Victoria. Look at me." There was a pause. I imagined her looking him up and down, taking in the ruined suit, the mud on his face, the sheer hopelessness in his eyes. "You look like trash," she said. "You are tracking dirt onto the carpet. Get out." "I beg you," Darnell sobbed. "Just let me come with you. I do not care about the money. You can keep it. Just do not leave me here to face the police alone. I will carry your bags. I will do whatever you want. Just take me to Zurich. I cannot go to prison, Victoria. I am scared." I held my breath. This was the pivot point. If she slammed the door, the plan was dead. If she let him in, we had her. She laughed. It was a cruel sound. "You want to come with me?" she asked. "As what?" "My pet. My servant." "Yes," Darnell said. "Anything. Just help me." I heard the door open wider. "Come in," she said. "But stay by the door. Do not touch anything." I exhaled. He was in. I could hear the sounds of the room. A suitcase zipper closing. The clinking of glass bottles from the minibar. Victoria was packing. She was drinking. She was celebrating her victory. "You really are pathetic," she said. "I always knew you were weak, but I did not think you would crawl back to me after I slapped you." "I love you," Darnell whispered. "You do not love me," she said. "You need me. There is a difference. You need me because without me, you are just a truck driver's son in a suit that does not fit." She paused. I heard the sound of liquid being poured. "Here," she said. "Have a drink. You look like you are going to pass out. And if you pass out on my floor, I will have to drag you into the hall." Darnell took the drink. I heard the glass clink. "So you have the money?" he asked. His voice was low, trying to sound conspiratorial. "You really got it all out?" "Every cent," she said. $2 million, plus the liquidity from the credit lines I maxed out this morning before your father locked the system. It is all in crypto and offshore bonds. Untraceable. By the time the FBI figures out the routing numbers, I will be skiing in the Alps, and you will be answering questions in a windowless room." "You are amazing," Darnell said. He sounded full of awe. "How did you do it? How did you fool everyone? Even Dad?" Victoria laughed again. She was comfortable now. She was gloating. The predator was playing with its food. "Your father is an old fool," she said. "He thinks he is smart because he knows computers. But he does not know people. He trusted you. And you trusted me. It was the easiest con I have ever pulled." She took a sip of her drink. I could hear the ice rattle. "But you know what is funny, Darnell," she said. Her voice dropped. It became darker. "I almost did not have to leave. I almost had it all. The company, the inheritance, the whole kingdom." "What do you mean?" Darnell asked. "I mean your father has been a problem for a long time," she said. "He was always watching, always checking the books. He was the only thing standing between me and a $10 million payout from Global Corp. If he had just died last year like he was supposed to, we would be rich and legal right now. My heart stopped. I pressed the earpiece deeper into my ear. Like he was supposed to, Darnell asked. "What are you talking about?" Victoria sighed. It was the sound of someone unburdening themselves of a heavy secret they were proud of. "I switched his heart medication, Darnell," she said casually. 6 months ago. I replaced his pills with sugar tablets. I thought the stress of the business would trigger a cardiac event. He is old. He eats garbage. It should have worked. I sat in my truck, frozen. The rain hammered on the roof, but I could not feel it. She had not just stolen from me. She had tried to kill me. She had actively tampered with my medication, hoping I would drop dead so she could sell my life's work. "You tried to kill him," Darnell whispered. The horror in his voice was real. This was not acting. "I tried to accelerate his retirement," she corrected. "But the old mule is too stubborn to die. So I had to go with plan B. Embezzle the cash, frame you for the fraud, and leave the country. Honestly, Darnell, you should be thanking me. If I had killed him, you would be mourning. This way you just go to jail." "It is a better deal for you." She laughed. It was a sound of pure evil. "Now drink your whiskey," she said. "I need to finish packing. My flight leaves in 4 hours." "You are a monster," Darnell said. His voice was shaking. He was not the submissive husband anymore. He was the son of Enoch Freeman, and he had just heard a confession to attempted murder. "I am a survivor," Victoria snapped. "And you are a victim. That is just the way the world works, honey. Now get out of my way. I need to get my jewelry case." She walked across the room. I could hear her heels clicking on the hardwood floor of the entryway. "I cannot let you leave," Darnell said. "Excuse me," she said. "I cannot let you leave," Darnell repeated. His voice was louder, stronger. "You tried to kill my father. You stole everything. I am not going to let you walk out that door." Victoria stopped. "And how are you going to stop me?" she asked. "Are you going to cry on me until I drown?" "Move, Darnell." "No," he said. I heard a scuffle. I heard fabric tearing. "Get your hands off me," she screamed. "I grabbed you because you are not going anywhere," Darnell shouted. Then I heard a gasp. It was Victoria. "What is this?" she hissed. Silence. Then the sound of plastic cracking. "A wire," she screamed. "You are wearing a wire?" I started the engine of the truck. I slammed it into gear. "You set me up!" she shrieked. Her voice was unrecognizable. It was the sound of a demon being burned by holy water. "You dirty little traitor! You set me up!" "It is over!" Victoria, Darnell yelled. "The FBI is outside. They heard everything." "I will kill you!" she screamed. I heard a crash, a table overturning, glass shattering, then a scream of pain from Darnell. "Ah!" She cut me. I floored the gas pedal. The truck tires spun on the wet asphalt before catching grip. I roared out of the alley and toward the service entrance. "Drop the knife," Victoria, Darnell shouted. His voice was panic-stricken. "Put it down!" She had grabbed a knife. A fruit knife from the welcome basket. I knew the room layout. I knew the basket was on the console table near the door. "You ruined everything," she screamed. "I was free. I was rich. You ruined it." I heard the sound of struggle. Bodies hitting the wall, heavy breathing. Another cry of pain from Darnell. "Dad, help me!" He screamed into the microphone. I slammed the truck into the loading dock ramp. I jumped out. I ran toward the service doors. I did not wait for the elevator. I hit the stairs running 2 at a time, my old knees screaming in protest. Upstairs in the room, the violence was escalating. "I am going to carve you up," she hissed. "I am going to make you bleed for this." I heard a thud. Darnell grunted. "She stabbed me," he gasped. "Dad," she stabbed me in the shoulder. I reached the 4th floor landing. I burst into the hallway. I saw the FBI agents. They were stacking up at the door waiting for the command. They had heard the struggle. "Go, go, go," the lead agent shouted. They hit the door with a battering ram. Boom! The wood splintered. Boom! The lock gave way. The door swung open, crashing against the wall. I was right behind them. I ran into the room. The scene was a nightmare. The room was trashed. Lamps were overturned. Luggage was spilled open clothes scattered everywhere like confetti. Darnell was on the floor near the bed. He was clutching his left shoulder. Blood was seeping through his fingers, staining his white shirt crimson. His face was pale, but his eyes were wide open. Victoria was standing over him. She was holding a silver paring knife. The blade was small, but it was covered in blood. Her hair was wild, her eyes manic. She looked like a cornered animal. She raised the knife again, ready to strike. Federal agents dropped the weapon. The lead agent screamed, aiming his service weapon at her chest. Victoria froze. She looked at the guns. 5 of them pointed directly at her heart. She looked at Darnell, bleeding on the floor. She looked at me standing in the doorway, breathless and wet from the rain. She did not drop the knife. She lowered it slowly, but she did not let go. Her mind was racing. I could see the gears turning. She was looking for a way out. She was looking for a lever to pull. She looked at her stomach. She placed her free hand over her abdomen. She looked up at the agents with wide, tear-filled eyes. She dropped the knife. It clattered on the floor. She raised her hands. "Do not shoot," she screamed. Her voice was suddenly terrified, pleading. "Please do not shoot. I am pregnant. I am carrying the Freeman heir. You will kill the baby." The agents hesitated. The guns lowered slightly. Uncertainty rippled through the room. Darnell looked up from the floor, confusion warring with the pain on his face. "Pregnant," he whispered. I stepped forward. I walked past the agents. I walked past my bleeding son. I stood in front of Victoria. I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out a manila envelope. It was not the evidence of the embezzlement. It was something else. Something my private investigator had found 2 days ago when he hacked her medical records. I threw the envelope on the table next to the bloody knife. "Drop the act, Victoria," I said. My voice was cold as the grave. "You are not pregnant, and you never will be. That is your medical file from the fertility clinic in Miami. You had a tubal ligation 4 years ago to fit into your wedding dress. You sterilized yourself because you did not want a child to ruin your figure." Victoria stared at the envelope. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking like a wax statue. The lie had evaporated. The shield was gone. "Cuff her," the agent said. And as the metal clicked around her wrists, I looked at my son, and I knew that the wound in his shoulder would heal, but the wound in his heart would leave a scar that would last forever. The lead agent signaled with a sharp hand motion. "Hold fire." The barrels of the service weapons lowered just an inch, but that inch was a mile in the world of high-stakes standoffs. Victoria saw the hesitation. She saw the doubt flicker in the eyes of the men who had come to put her in a cage. She seized it. She dropped to her knees, not in surrender, but in a calculated pose of vulnerability. She cradled her stomach with her bloody hands. She began to sob. "Please," she wailed. "You cannot hurt me. You cannot hurt my baby. It is Darnell's baby. It is his son." Darnell was still on the floor, bleeding from the stab wound in his shoulder. He looked at her through a haze of pain and shock. His face was gray. His eyes were wide and confused. "Pregnant," he whispered. The words sounded foreign on his tongue. "We never talked about this." "You said you were on the pill." "I wanted to surprise you," Victoria cried. "I found out last week. I was going to tell you tonight. Before everything went wrong. I did it all for us, Darnell. I took the money for the baby. To give him a good life." She looked at the agents. Her eyes were pleading, wet with tears that looked disturbingly real. "I am not a criminal," she sobbed. "I am a mother protecting her child. My husband attacked me. He was angry about the money. I just defended myself. I had to protect the baby." The narrative was shifting. In seconds, she had turned the room upside down. She was no longer the embezzler with a knife. She was the pregnant victim of domestic violence. The lead agent looked at Darnell, who was bleeding on the floor. He looked at the knife lying next to him. He looked at Victoria, shaking and weeping. Uncertainty crept into his posture. "Check her," the agent ordered, but his voice lacked the steel it had a moment ago. "Get a medic. We need to verify her condition before we move her." Victoria smiled behind her hands. It was invisible to the agents, but I saw it. I was standing in the doorway watching the performance of a lifetime. She thought she had won. She thought she had found the ultimate shield, a shield made of an imaginary life. The agents were stepping back, giving her space. The medic was moving forward, his bag in hand, ready to treat the poor pregnant woman. Darnell was staring at her with a mix of horror and hope. He wanted it to be true, even after everything. Even after she stabbed him, part of him still wanted to believe that there was something real between them, that there was a legacy. That was when I stepped into the room. My boots crunched on the broken glass. The sound was loud in the sudden quiet of the standoff. The agents turned. They saw an old black man in a wet jacket, his face set like granite. They did not raise their weapons. They sensed that the gravity of the room had just shifted again. I walked past the lead agent. I walked past the medic. I walked past my bleeding son, who looked up at me with eyes that begged for answers. I stopped 3 feet from Victoria. She looked up. Her tears stopped instantly. Stopped. Her eyes narrowed. She knew. She looked at me, and she saw the end of the world. "Step away, sir," the lead agent warned. "We have a medical situation here. The suspect claims she is pregnant." "She is not pregnant," I said. My voice was calm level. It was the voice of a judge delivering a sentence. "She is a liar, and she is about to be a prisoner." Victoria hissed. "Get away from me, Enoch. You do not know anything. You are just a jealous old man who wants to kill his grandchild." I reached into my jacket pocket. The movement was slow, deliberate. The agents tensed, but they did not stop me. I pulled out a thick manila envelope. It was sealed with red wax. I held it up. "This is not a weapon," I said to the agents. "This is the truth." I tossed the envelope onto the blood-stained carpet in front of Victoria. It landed with a heavy thud. "Open it," I said. Victoria stared at the envelope. She did not move. Her hands were still clutching her stomach, but her knuckles were white. "What is this?" Darnell whispered from the floor. "Dad, what is that?" "Open it, Victoria," I repeated. "Or do you want me to tell them what is inside? Do you want me to tell Darnell why there will never be a Freeman heir coming from you?" She lunged. She tried to grab the envelope, to tear it, to hide it. But the lead agent was faster. He stepped on the envelope, trapping it under his boot. He reached down and picked it up. He tore the seal. He pulled out a stack of medical records. He read the first page. His eyebrows shot up. He looked at Victoria. Then he looked at me. "This is a medical file from the Miami Center for Reproductive Health," the agent read. "Patient name, Victoria Klein. Date of procedure, August 14th, 2019. "No," Victoria screamed. "That is fake. He forged it. He is lying." "Read the procedure." "Agent," I said. "Read it loud so my son can hear it." The agent cleared his throat. "Procedure performed bilateral tubal ligation. Notes. Patient requested permanent sterilization for lifestyle reasons. Confirmation of success verified." The words hung in the air. Bilateral tubal ligation. Permanent sterilization. Darnell made a sound that was not quite a cry and not quite a moan. It was the sound of a soul breaking. He looked at Victoria. He looked at the woman he had stolen, for the woman he had betrayed his father, for the woman he had taken a knife for. "You got your tubes tied," he whispered. 4 years ago. Before the wedding." Victoria stopped crying. She dropped her hands from her stomach. The act was over. The curtain had fallen and the lights were on. She looked at Darnell with cold, dead eyes. "Yes," she spat. "Yes, I did. Because I was not going to ruin my body for you. I was not going to get fat and stretch marks just to give you a little trophy to show your daddy. I hate children, Darnell. I always have." "But you said," Darnell stammered. "You said you wanted a family. You said we were trying." "I said what you needed to hear," she screamed. "I told you what would make you open the checkbook. I told you what would make you buy the big house. It was a business transaction, Darnell. Everything was a transaction. And you were just the ATM." She looked at me. Pure hatred radiated from her face. "You old bastard," she hissed. "You were spying on me. I was vetting you," I said. "I knew what you were the moment you walked into my house. I just needed the paper to prove it." The lead agent had heard enough. He holstered his weapon and pulled out his handcuffs. The metal clicked ominously. "Victoria Freeman, you are under arrest for federal wire fraud, embezzlement, assault with a deadly weapon, and attempted murder," he said. He grabbed her arm and pulled her up. She fought him. She kicked and screamed. No, she shrieked. "You cannot touch me. I have rights. Darnell, tell them to let me go." Darnell did not speak. He laid his head back on the floor and closed his eyes. Tears leaked out and mixed with the blood on his cheek. They dragged her out. Her screams echoed down the hallway, fading into the distance like a siren moving away. I knelt down beside my son. I took off my jacket and pressed it against his bleeding shoulder. "It is over, son," I said. He opened his eyes. They were empty. "She is gone, Dad," he whispered. "Yes," I said. "She is gone. And so is everything else. Now you can finally start living." I looked at the door. The agents were waiting. Darnell was next. The night was far from over. Immunity from prosecution does not mean immunity from consequence. Darnell walked out of the federal courthouse a free man in the eyes of the law, but a dead man in the eyes of the city. He had testified. He had handed over the recordings. He had given the agents every password and every email chain they needed to lock Victoria away for 20 years. In exchange, the prosecutor granted him leniency for his role in the embezzlement, labeling him a coerced participant. But the Department of Justice could not save him from the banks. The seizure of his assets was swift and absolute. I watched from my truck across the street as the marshals put the padlock on the gates of the mansion. They did not just take the house, they took everything inside it. The furniture, the art, the electronics, and the clothes were all tagged for auction to pay back the creditors. Global Corp sued for damages. The local banks called in the personal loans. The credit card companies filed immediate judgments. Within 48 hours of Victoria's arrest, Darnell had a net worth of -$4 million. He stood on the sidewalk outside the gates of the life he used to live. He was holding a plastic bag containing a change of underwear and a toothbrush, which was all the marshals had allowed him to keep. The Range Rover was gone, towed away an hour ago. His watch was gone, handed over to a court officer. He was wearing his ruined suit, the one stained with mud and blood from the hotel room. He looked like a scarecrow that had survived a tornado. I did not go to him immediately. I wanted him to feel the wind. I wanted him to feel the asphalt through the thin soles of his dress shoes. He took his phone out of his pocket. It was dead. Service had been cut off for non-payment that morning. He looked at the black screen, then he looked at the sky. He started walking. He walked 5 miles. He walked past the country clubs where he used to play golf. He walked past the restaurants where they used to spend $1,000 on wine. He walked until the pavement turned to gravel and the mansions turned to modest ranches. He walked all the way to my front door. I was sitting on the porch when he arrived. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the yard. Darnell stopped at the bottom of the steps. He looked exhausted. His lips were chapped and his eyes were hollow pits. He looked at me, and for the first time in his life, he did not look entitled. He looked hungry. He tried to smile, but his face cracked. "Hey, Dad," he rasped. His voice was dry. "Hello, Darnell," I said. "I guess you heard," he said. "They took it all. The house is gone. The accounts are frozen. I have $12 in my pocket." I nodded. "I heard." He took a step up the stairs. "Can I come in?" he asked. "I just need a shower and a bed. I can sleep in my old room. I just need to crash for a few weeks until I get back on my feet." I stood up. I blocked the doorway. My frame filled the space. "No," I said. Darnell stopped. He blinked, confused. "What do you mean, no? I am your son. I have nowhere else to go. You cannot stay here," I said. My voice was hard granite. "You cannot sleep in that room. That room belongs to a boy who had promise. That room belongs to a boy who had a future. That boy died the day you decided to steal from your own father." "Dad, please," Darnell begged. He took another step. "I helped you. I wore the wire. I put her in jail. I did what you asked. You did what you had to do to save your own skin," I corrected him. "You cleaned up a mess you helped create. That does not make you a hero, Darnell. It just makes you a witness." He slumped against the railing. "So what are you going to do?" he asked. "Are you going to let me sleep on the street? Are you going to let me starve? I am your flesh and blood." Mom would never have done this. "Do not speak her name," I snapped. The anger flared hot and bright. "Your mother worked herself into an early grave to build this legacy. She trusted you, and you spat on her grave when you let that woman try to kill me. If Coretta were here, she would not open the door. She would hand you a shovel and tell you to start digging." "I am not letting you starve," I continued, "but I am not letting you slide back into comfort. If I let you in this house, if I let you sleep in a warm bed and eat my food, you will never learn. You will wait for the next Victoria to come along and save you. You will wait for the next handout. You are 35 years old, Darnell. It is time you learned how to survive." Darnell looked at me with tears welling in his eyes. "Dad, I do not know how to do anything else. I was a CEO. I do not have a trade." "You were never a CEO," I said. "You were a mascot, but you are wrong about one thing. You do have a trade. You have a commercial driver's license. I made you get it when you were 18, remember? I told you it was insurance. Well, son, the policy just cashed out." I reached into my pocket. I felt the cold metal of a set of keys. They were not the keys to a new Volvo or a Peterbilt. They were the keys to Unit 404. I threw them. They arced through the air and landed with a clatter at Darnell's feet. Unit 404 is parked in the back lot, I said. It is a 1990 Freightliner. It has 1,000,000 miles on it. The air conditioning is broken. The heater works too well. The passenger seat is torn and it smells like wet dog and old cigars. Darnell looked at the keys. He looked at me. That truck is a piece of junk, he whispered. That truck is your home, I said. It has a sleeper cab. It has a mattress. It is dry. And starting tomorrow morning, it has a route. You want me to drive? He asked. I want you to work, I said. I want you to wake up at 4 in the morning. I want you to haul gravel and steel. I want you to eat gas station sandwiches. I want you to shower at truck stops. I want you to feel every bump in the road. I opened a separate account for you. I will pay you the standard union rate, not a penny more. You pay for your own fuel. You pay for your own repairs. If you save enough, you can rent an apartment. If you do not, you sleep in the truck. Dad, this is humiliating, he said. People will see me. The drivers will see me. Good, I said. Let them see you. Let them see you sweat. Let them see you bleed. Respect is not bought, Darnell. It is earned. You lost their respect when you tried to fire me. You can only get it back 1 mile at a time. I pointed at the keys. Pick them up, I said. Or leave them there and walk to the homeless shelter downtown. It is your choice. Darnell stared at the keys for a long time. The sun was gone now. The porch light buzzed overhead. He looked at the warm light spilling from the living room window. He looked at the comfortable life he had thrown away. Then he looked at the muddy keys. He bent down. His knees cracked. He picked up the keys. He gripped them tight in his fist. He did not say thank you. He did not look at me. He turned around and started walking toward the back lot. I watched him go. He walked with a heavy step. He walked past the shiny new trucks, the ones he had bought with stolen money. He walked all the way to the back fence where the weeds grew tall. Unit 404 was sitting there, a rusted hulk of metal in the moonlight. He climbed up on the running board. He struggled with this heavy door. It groaned as he pulled it open. He climbed into the dark cab. I saw the interior light flicker on. It was dim and yellow. He sat in the driver's seat. He put his hands on the massive steering wheel. He sat there for a minute. Then I saw his shoulders start to shake. He was crying again. But this was different. He was not crying for an audience. He was crying because for the first time in his life he was completely alone. He was in a prison of his own making, but at least he held the keys. The engine cranked. It coughed and sputtered. It whined in protest. Then with a roar and a belch of black smoke, it came to life. The vibration rattled the windows of my house. I turned off the porch light. I went inside and locked the door. I went to the kitchen and made myself a sandwich. I ate it standing up. I was not happy, but I was satisfied. My son was safe from prison. He was safe from Victoria. Now he just had to be safe from himself. The road would teach him. The road was a harsh teacher, but it never lied. 6 months is a long time in the logistics business, but it is an eternity in the life of a man trying to rebuild his soul. Freeman. Logistics was dead and buried. The liquidation auction had been a spectacle attended by vultures and competitors alike, but I did not watch it. I was too busy building something new. I launched Coretta Transport 3 weeks after the collapse. It was smaller, leaner, and hungry. I did not take the CEO chair this time. I hired a woman named Sarah, a sharp operator from Chicago, who knew how to balance a ledger without cooking it. I took the title of chairman, which meant I drank coffee in the back office and made sure the culture stayed honest. The crown jewel of the new fleet was not the shiny new Volvos with the digital dashes. It was Unit 404, the rusted Freightliner that smelled of old cigars. It was still running, and so was its driver. I stood on the loading dock at 5 in the morning watching the trucks roll out. The morning mist was heavy, clinging to the asphalt like a wet blanket. I saw Unit 404 rumble toward the gate. The driver did not wave. He did not smile. He checked his mirrors, signaled his turn, and merged into the traffic of I-95. Darnell had changed. The soft, doughy look of the boardroom executive was gone, burned away by 90-hour work weeks and a diet of truck stop coffee and tuna sandwiches. He had lost 30 pounds. His skin was darkened by the sun that beat through the driver's side window. His hands, which used to hold nothing heavier than a fountain pen, were now stained with grease and covered in calluses. He looked 10 years older, and for the first time he looked like a man. He was not living in the house. He was true to the terms I set. He slept in the sleeper cab of the truck 6 nights a week. On Sundays, he rented a cheap motel room near the depot just to take a long shower and wash his clothes. He did not complain. He did not ask for money. He just drove. The other driver's men like Silas and Big Mike had watched him with suspicion at first. They expected him to quit after the first week. They expected him to come crying to me when the heater broke or a tire blew out in the rain. But he didn't. He fixed the tire himself in the mud on the side of the highway. He wrapped himself in blankets when the heater died. He showed up on time every single day. Slowly, the ice had started to break. I saw it in small things. Silas sharing a thermos of coffee with him on the dock. Big Mike helping him back a tricky load into a tight bay. They did not call him boss anymore. They called him Darnell, or sometimes Rookie. It was not affection yet, but it was the beginning of respect. Darnell parked the rig at the end of his shift on a Tuesday evening. He walked into the dispatch office to drop off his logs. He looked exhausted. His eyes were red-rimmed and his gait was stiff. He walked past my office door. He stopped. He nodded at me. It was a professional nod. "Good evening, Chairman," he said. "Good evening, driver," I replied. He put an envelope on my desk. It was a check. Every week he gave me 20% of his paycheck. It was restitution. We had never written it down. We had never signed a contract about it. He just started doing it. It was his way of paying back the $2 million he had helped steal. At this rate, it would take him 3 lifetimes to pay it off, but the math did not matter. The intent mattered. I looked at the check. It was for $200. It represented sweat, back pain, and loneliness. It was worth more to me than the $2 million he had lost. I watched him walk out. He did not go to a bar. He did not go to a club. He went back to his truck to sleep because he had a run to Ohio in the morning. He was learning the hardest lesson of all. The road does not care who your father is. The road only cares if you can keep it between the lines. The solitude of the long haul is a mirror. You cannot run from yourself when you are staring at a white line for 10 hours straight. Darnell told me once during a brief exchange at the fuel pumps that he finally understood why I was always tired when I came home when he was a boy. "I used to think you were ignoring us," he had said, wiping diesel off his hands with a rag. "I used to think you loved the truck more than you loved me. But now I know. You were tired because you were carrying the whole world on your back. You were tired because you were making sure we had lights and heat and food." I never said thank you, Dad. I had not known what to say then, so I just grunted and checked his tire pressure. But his words stuck with me. He was seeing the ghost of my past in his own present. He was walking in my footprints, and they were fitting him better every day. He was also learning the value of a dollar. When he was CEO, he would sign invoices for $50,000 without blinking. Now he argued with mechanics over a $50 part. He scrutinized his fuel efficiency. He ate peanut butter sandwiches because the diner food was too expensive. He was becoming frugal. He was becoming disciplined. One night I stayed late at the office reviewing the quarterly projections for Coretta Transport. We were in the black. The reputation I had built over 40 years had survived the scandal. Clients came back because they trusted Big E. The phone on my desk rang. It was the landline, the number listed for the business. I picked it up. "Coretta Transport," I said. "This is the state correctional facility calling," a robotic voice said. "You have a collect call from an inmate. Victoria Freeman. Press 1 to accept." I froze. I had not heard her name in 6 months. She had pleaded guilty to avoid a life sentence taking 20 years with a chance of parole in 15. She was rotting in a cell upstate. I looked at the phone. I could hang up. I could block the number. But then I saw Darnell walking past the glass wall of my office. He was heading out to his truck for the night. "Darnell," I called out. He stopped and opened the door. "Yeah, Dad." "Telephone," I said. He looked confused. "Who is it?" "It is her," I said. His face hardened. The fatigue seemed to vanish, replaced by a cold wariness. He walked into the office. He looked at the phone in my hand as if it were a snake. "Do you want to take it?" I asked. He looked at me. Then he looked at the phone. He reached out and took the receiver. He pressed 1. "Hello," he said. I could hear her voice faint and tinny on the other end. I could not make out the words, but I could hear the tone. It was high-pitched, desperate pleading. She was crying. She was begging. She was probably asking for money for a lawyer, for commissary, for forgiveness. She was spinning a web trying to find a thread that was still attached to him. Darnell listened for a full minute. He did not say a word. His expression did not change. He just stared at the wall behind my desk where a picture of Coretta hung. He listened to the woman who had ruined his life, who had humiliated him, who had tried to kill his father. Then he spoke. "Victoria," he said. His voice was calm, flat. She went silent on the other end, waiting for his answer, waiting for the old Darnell to surface, the one who would do anything to make her smile. "Do not call this number again," Darnell said. "The man you are looking for is dead. You killed him." He hung up the phone. He did not slam it. He placed it gently back in the cradle. He looked at me. He took a deep breath. "I have to go, Dad," he said. "I have a load of lumber to get to Cincinnati by dawn." "Be safe, driver," I said. He nodded, turned, and walked out. He did not look back. I swiveled my chair around and looked out the window. I watched him walk across the dark parking lot. His stride was long and purposeful. He climbed into the cab of Unit 404. The lights flickered on. The engine roared a deep, throaty growl that vibrated against the glass of my office. He pulled the truck out of the slot and headed for the gate. The taillights faded into the night-red eyes in the darkness. I nodded to myself. The boy was gone. The executive was gone. The victim was gone. What was left was iron. It was rough and it was unpolished, but it was strong. I turned off the office lights and sat in the dark for a moment, listening to the silence. It was a good silence. The kind that comes after a storm has finally blown itself out, leaving the air clean and the ground ready for replanting. I had destroyed his life to save him. And tonight, watching those taillights disappear, I knew I had made the right trade. It was the first Tuesday in November. It was my 69th birthday. In the past, this day was an event. Victoria used to organize gala dinners at the country club. She would invite the mayor, the city council, and every vendor we did business with. There would be ice sculptures and a jazz band. Darnell would wear a tuxedo and give a speech about my vision while looking at his cue cards. I hated every minute of it. I hated the small talk. I hated the food that looked like art but tasted like cardboard. I hated the feeling that I was a prop in my own life. This year there were no ice sculptures, there was no jazz band, there was just me, a bottle of bourbon, and the silence of my empty house. I sat in my favorite armchair by the window. The rain was tapping against the glass, a steady rhythm that matched the beating of my heart. I poured a glass of bourbon. I did not drink it. I just held it, letting the warmth seep into my fingers. I looked at the empty chair across from me. It was Coretta's chair. Even though she had been gone for 4 years, I never let anyone sit in it. Not Darnell, not Victoria, especially not Victoria. I missed Coretta tonight more than usual. She was the only one who knew that I did not want a party. She knew that all I wanted for my birthday was a quiet meal and the knowledge that my family was safe. Safe. That was a complicated word now. Darnell was safe from prison. He was safe from Victoria. But was he safe from himself? I had not spoken to him in 2 weeks. He was on a long-haul run to the West Coast and back. I checked the GPS tracker on my laptop. Unit 404 was parked in the back lot of the depot. He had arrived an hour ago. I wondered if he remembered what day it was. I wondered if he even cared. I had stripped him of his fortune. I had forced him into a life of hard labor. Most sons would hate their fathers for that. Most sons would let the date pass without a word. I told myself it did not matter. I told myself I did not need a card or a gift. But the silence in the house was heavy. It pressed against my ears. I took a sip of the bourbon. It burned on the way down. It was a good burn. It reminded me I was still alive. I was 69 years old. I had built an empire. I had lost a family. And then I had rebuilt the empire. But tonight, staring at the rain, I felt every single one of those years in my bones. I was tired. Not the kind of tired sleep fixes. The kind of tired that comes from holding up the sky for too long. I heard a knock at the door. It was not the doorbell. It was a heavy, rhythmic knock on the wood, the kind of knock a man makes with a calloused hand. I put the glass down. I stood up. My knees popped. I walked to the door. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled it open. Darnell stood on the porch. He was wearing his work coveralls. They were stained with grease and road dust. He smelled of diesel fuel and rain. His beard was thick, unkempt. He looked like a man who had just climbed out of a coal mine. He was holding a small paper bag in one hand and his trucker hat in the other. He looked at me. He did not smile. He did not look down. He met my eyes. "Happy birthday, Dad," he said. His voice was raspy from days of silence on the road. I looked at him. I saw the lines around his eyes. I saw the gray starting to show in his hair. He looked older than 36. He looked like he had lived a life. "Hello, son," I said. "You are late." "I had a blown tire outside of St. Louis," he said. "Took me an hour to change it in the mud." I nodded. "That happens." He held out the paper bag. It was a brown lunch bag, greasy at the bottom. "I got you something," he said. "It is not much. It is not a watch or a trip to Italy. But I paid for it with my own money. Overtime money." I took the bag. It felt heavy. I opened it. Inside, wrapped in simple tissue paper, was a Leatherman multi-tool. It was the heavy-duty model, the kind mechanics use. The steel was cold and solid. I pulled it out. I opened the pliers. They snapped into place with a satisfying click. It was a tool, a useful thing, a thing meant to fix what was broken. "I noticed yours was getting loose," he said. "The one you keep in the truck." The hinge was wobbling. "You cannot fix a fuel line with a wobbly tool." I looked at the tool. Then I looked at Darnell. He was not looking for approval. He was not looking for a pat on the head. He was just stating a fact. He had noticed a problem and he had fixed it. "It is a good tool," I said. "It has a 25-year warranty," he said. "It will last." I put the tool in my pocket. It felt right there. "Thank you," I said. He nodded. He turned to leave. "I have to go," he said. "I have logs to fill out." I looked at his back. I saw the slump of his shoulders. He was exhausted. He was hungry. And he was walking away because he thought that was what he deserved. "Darnell," I said. He stopped. He did not turn around. "Yeah, Dad. I made stew," I said. "There is too much for one old man." He stood there for a moment. The rain dripped off the eaves of the porch. Then he turned around. "Beef stew," he asked. "With carrots and potatoes," I said. "The way your mother made it." He walked back up the steps. He wiped his boots on the mat. He walked into the house. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he had done his homework 30 years ago, the same table where Victoria had screamed at me. Now it was just us. 2 bowls of steaming stew, a loaf of bread, a pitcher of water. We ate in silence. It was not an awkward silence. It was the silence of 2 men who were too tired to talk and too hungry to care. Darnell ate like a wolf. He tore the bread and dipped it into the gravy. He scraped the bottom of the bowl. I watched him. I saw the way his hands moved. They were strong hands now, capable hands. They were not soft anymore. He finished his bowl and pushed it away. He leaned back in the chair. He looked at me. "Good stew," he said. I nodded. "How is the truck running?" I asked. "She is rough," he said. "The transmission slips in 3rd gear. The radiator has a slow leak. But she pulls. She never quits." "We can look at the transmission on Saturday," I said. "I have a spare parts kit in the garage." He looked surprised. "You want to help me fix it?" "I am not fixing it for you," I said. "I am helping you fix it. There is a difference." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, there is a difference." He took a sip of water. "I heard from the lawyer," he said, "about Victoria." I stopped eating. "What about her?" "She gets sentenced next week," he said. "They are saying 15 years. I waited. I watched his face. I looked for the weakness. I looked for the regret. "She sent me a letter," he said. I tensed. What did it say? He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. He did not open it. He just held it. "She said, 'She forgives me,'" he said. "She said if I testify for her, maybe the judge will be lenient. She said she still loves me." He looked at the paper. Then he stood up. He walked to the stove. He turned on the gas burner. The blue flame flickered to life. He held the corner of the letter to the flame. It caught instantly. The fire curled the paper, turning the words into black ash. He held it until it almost burned his fingers, then he dropped it into the sink. He turned on the faucet and washed the ash down the drain. "She does not love me," he said. "She loves the mark. And the mark is dead." He turned off the water. He looked at me. His eyes were clear. "Happy birthday, Dad," he said. I looked at my son. I looked at the man standing in my kitchen. He was not the CEO in the Italian suit. He was not the husband who begged for scraps of affection. He was a truck driver. He was a worker. He was a freeman. I realized then that I had saved him. I had to burn his life to the ground to do it. I had to destroy his marriage, his career, and his ego. I had to be the villain in his story so he could become the hero in his own. It was a high price, but looking at him now, I knew it was a bargain. I stood up. I walked over to him. I did not hug him. We were not hugging men. I put my hand on his shoulder. I squeezed it. The muscle underneath was hard as iron. "Get some sleep, driver," I said. "We ride at dawn." He nodded. "Yes, sir." He walked out the door. I followed him to the porch. I watched him walk to the back lot. The sun was just starting to crack the horizon, a thin line of gold against the purple sky. I saw two trucks parked side by side, my old Ford and his battered Freightliner. One was a relic, one was a wreck, but together they looked like a fleet. They looked like a future. I touched the Leatherman in my pocket. It was cold and heavy. It was the best gift I had ever received. I went back inside and turned off the light. The nightmare was over. The work was just beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready for it. I learned that the hardest part of fatherhood is not giving your children everything, but knowing when to take it all away. For years, I confused protection with enabling, and I almost destroyed the son I meant to save. True love is not a soft cushion. Sometimes it is a hard floor that forces you to stand up. By stripping Darnell of his unearned privilege, I gave him back his dignity. A legacy isn't built on bank accounts or titles. It is built on the calluses of honest work and the integrity of a man who knows his own worth. If you believe that respect is earned in the mud and not bought in a boardroom, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of hard-won justice. And tell me in the comments, would you have the courage to burn down your own empire to save your family?